We acknowledge the lives lost to suicide and recognise those who have survived suicide attempts and those who struggle today or in the past with thoughts of suicide, mental health issues, and crisis situations. We acknowledge all those who have felt the deep impact of suicide, including those who love, care, and support people experiencing suicidality and those experiencing the pain and bereavement through suicide. We respect collaboration with people who have a lived or living experience of suicide and mental health issues and value their contribution to the work we do.
My two girls were my responsibility, and that was very, very important. So I knew that I needed to be healthy enough to look after them because that was a very important job.
Welcome to Holding On to Hope, a series that shares the stories of everyday Australians that have experienced moments in crisis and found a path to support. Whilst all of the stories shared offer hope and inspiration, at times you may hear something you find triggering. If you or someone you know needs crisis support, please phone Lifeline on 13 11 14, text 0477 13 11 14, or visit lifeline.org.au for Lifeline chat service, which is 24/7.
Welcome to Holding On to Hope. On today's episode, we are joined by Grant. On the 31st of October 1994, Grant took on what he thought was the biggest challenge of his life, getting sober. Along his journey, he learnt the power of talking therapy, prioritising mental and emotional well-being, and setting crystal clear boundaries. Little did he know, all his work of self-discovery was the foundation he needed to carry himself through 7 years of adversity with resilience and determination. In 2010, life took an unexpected turn. Divorce, the loss of a father, home, and a significant physical transformation due to stress reshaped everything. Sharing his story is a testament to the transformative power of adversity. Grant's aim is to inspire and motivate others for change. I'd like to invite you to share whatever you're comfortable with in doing so about your journey.
Thank you, Ruben. When I was around 13, I remember that I was quite uncomfortable and I had my first drink at about 14. So what that did for me, it took away those emotions that I was frightened to feel or to think about. So I ended up going down that path of using alcohol and using drugs to secure that feeling of safe, but it wasn't it wasn't successful for me at all, and I endured some very, very difficult times on the drink, and I was a person that one was too much and 20 wasn't enough, so there was nothing really in my life that at that point that sort of led me down that path. It was just I was uncomfortable. I was at a school dance and I found the booze, and that was it. So I thought I chased the booze to chase those feelings away, those emotions that I never wanted to feel. And really grateful that I got to that day on Halloween and the 31st of October. And but it was a firm decision within me that I'd had enough to drink. It was about a year prior to that I'd given up drugs as well. I was battered and beaten with the booze. I'm very grateful that I sought help.
Could you share the pivotal moment or decision that propelled you forward in your journey towards sobriety and personal growth?
So I remember that morning that I I woke up and I rang my mum and I told her that I'd burned another relationship to the ground and I really needed to stop my drinking. And so I guess my mum was sort of the first port of call. And I think she was quite relieved that I had got to that point, which, as I said, it was like something that I was longing for a long period of time, but I just couldn't get there because the booze, it was like it was a demon. It had me. So, I'm just grateful that I guess I started walking was one of the first things.
The loss of a father, divorce, and significant life changes in 2010 shaped your world or reshaped your world. How did you navigate through grief and uncertainty during this period, and what lessons did you learn from these experiences?
I lost 21 kilos through stress, and that was all in a 3-month period. So what I didn't realise then was grief had actually got hold of me. The work, what I was doing at the time, was really just, that was the only thing that was getting me through, really trying to maintain, you know, family relationships with regards to communication and those sorts of things. But how I sort of started to get through it was that, I think I was really relying on work, and I didn't understand how sort of grief worked. I didn't understand that till later on down the track, but I understand that, you know, grief comes from loss, and I experienced a lot of loss in a very short period of time, and that really took its toll. So I think that there again, working, and I wasn't really acknowledging that pain was starting to build and stress was starting to build, and I just was trying to continually move forward every day. I was very grateful, obviously, that I was sober, and that never came into question. But you know, that pain and stress started to really started to build, and it was very uncomfortable. But I think I got through it in a very maybe a very sort of odd sort of fashion. I think because I was still there again. I think I still went back to numbing myself and maybe ignoring the emotions and the feelings that I was having around that.
Are you able to, share with us a bit more about what that rock bottom was for you?
Not long after that divorce and the adversity that I have spoken about, my mental health did start to decline. And I know that there was a period of, it may have been a year or two after that, and both of my daughters came to live with me, and that was it was a joy, and it was a happy time. But I also knew that I was really starting to struggle mentally as well, and not that I wasn't fit. I was certainly fit to look after them. And I know that there were times when they were at school, and I would go and sit at the beach because that's about all I could sort of do. And by now things were really starting to build up inside of me to a point that, and I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I was quite deeply depressed. And I was also had become suicidal. That was quite frightening because I'd never really had thoughts like that before. So that was extremely confronting for me. I actually reached out to a counsellor, and I remember that day sitting at the beach talking to that counsellor, and they were able to talk me back, and I was very grateful for that. But it was a very, very, very difficult time to get through.
What got you to a position to make that call, or I suppose to reach out to the counsellor?
The reason that I called is because I knew I was in trouble with those thoughts. I'd never had them before, and they were telling me to go out to the ocean and never come back. But I had a responsibility, and my two girls were my responsibility, and that was very, very important. So I knew that I needed to be healthy enough to look after them, because that was a very important job. It was a very important job.
You discovered a profound responsibility towards your daughters. How did this newfound sense of responsibility shape your mindset and actions during your difficult times?
It started to override where I was at emotionally and mentally, I think, and I just knew that, like, I had that responsibility. They had to be fed, had to be nurtured, had to be looked after, had to be, got to school and that sort of thing. But I think I'd learned, like previously in those previous years, since the moment that I got sober, there was so much that I learned about emotional well-being for myself and how important that is. And I knew for the girls that was really important. So I had to start to focus on them and focus on, talking about, emotional well-being, because, things that they had gone through were quite upsetting. It just really took over where I was at. And I think that was the point that I really started to like forget about Grant, but I forgot about me so I could focus on them and get them through, our adverse times and where I was at. So I can see that that's where I sort of dropped away really from taking really putting myself in an area where there was self-compassion and self-love, and I started to forget about all of that, which was very difficult, and it really took me a few years before I sort of come to again from that.
We hope you're enjoying this episode. Lifeline's new support toolkit makes it easier to care for family, friends, and loved ones, and look after yourself along the way. Visit us at toolkit.lifeline.org.au. Now, back to the episode.
How do you believe your experiences can inspire and motivate others to initiate change in their own lives?
Well, firstly, I would say, don't leave it as long as I did before you reach out for help. That's really important. And I think that through my experience with, Lifeline and counselling has been so important, and how that has really freed me up, like, emotionally and mentally. So I think it's, if anything comes out of this story with regards to what other people want to take out of it if they are struggling, then please don't wait before you reach out for help, because there's always somebody else out there who can help, who can listen, and who can take the time to help you recover.
Over the past couple of years, there's been a few things that have happened for you, and things have changed over time. Are you able to share that with us and what that journey's been like for you?
Yes, the last couple of years have been very difficult. Again, I think things that have caught up with me again with regards to, a family crisis. So really, the adverse times just haven't sort of come and gone. It's been a lot of adversity for 7 to 10 years. And I've been a great father through that, and I'm very grateful for that. And my girls are really strong mentally and emotionally. But there was a period back in 22 that that they were doing really well. So I thought, well, I'm doing really well, so I'll sort of throw myself back into work. And only lasted about 3 or 4 months, and I had a breakdown. So I reached out to Lifeline, and I came in and had my first face-to-face session, and I answered a few questions, and what come out of those questions was that I was in severe psychological distress. And that took a lot of weight off my shoulders, because I didn't understand that, but that's where I was. I took some more time out, done some more counselling, and I thought, oh, beauty, like I'm right to go again. So I sort of threw myself back into work, and then it was about March last year, in 2023, that I had another breakdown, and this breakdown was suicidality. I dissociated. I'd never ever dissociated before in my life, but this time it was the middle of the night. I had the thought of getting up out of bed and going to the bush and taking my own life. Thank God I never did that. Those thoughts were there, and I thought, well, if I do that, then it could be very harmful, have a very, very negative effect on my girls. And the moment that I thought that was the moment that I sort of, those thoughts just pulled me back. I was terrified. It was frightening because I was there by myself. I was alone, and those thoughts were very frightening. But the morning, I must have gone back to sleep. And I remember very vividly at 7 a.m. I woke up, and virtually the first thing that was in my mind was the Lifeline crisis line, and I had to ring them, and I reached out. But I'm so grateful that Lifeline was there for me.
If you could just share with us how your experience has been with counselling and being able to share your story, how has that been for you?
There was a main reason that I wanted to come to Lifeline is because I had a bit of I'd also had a rapport that I'd sort of built, like being an advocate for them, and I've brought other people here and that. But the fact is that it's a phone call, and it's like an intake. So within a few days, you can be in free face-to-face counselling, and I found that very, very important because financially, all through these years, has been very, very difficult. So I found that a great part of the counselling that I could do that, and I'm very grateful that they offer that as well, because I think it's and the crisis line. I mean, it's virtually saving lives is what they do when they talk to people like myself. So I'm very grateful for that.
Grant, how have you found your experience sharing your story? Because this is quite new for you that you've started openly talking to groups.
About speaking openly and publicly, I think that this is I believe that I'm at that space now. I'm at that head space. I'm at that heart space where I've got through all of the drama and the trauma and the the suicidality and like I'm in I think a 32 clinical percentile. So that's a normal psychological mind, which is a fantastic place to be. So I'm very open and I'm very honest, and I just really love to share that stuff. And now I've learned to turn on the headlights of hope.
Can you sort of tell us what is a part of your self-care plan, or what things you do that make you you today?
I bodyboard. That's I love to get out there in the waves and get out there with the dolphins, and that's really good. I also do a lot of walking. So like I walk about anywhere from 30 to 40 kilometres a week. That is great respite for the mind. I can be starting off that walk troubled, and by the end of the walk, I'm just feeling so good. I also do a lot of inward looking, or a lot of personal inventory, not analysing, but just making sure that the Grant is being looked after by Grant, which is so important. That self-compassion, the empathy, self-love, self-talk. Like I get up every day and I say, Grant, I love you. And I look myself in the mirror and I say, I really do love you. And I love spending time with Grant today. And that's something that's really, really, it's just such a happy feeling to be in love with me, because I never did treat Grant like that. So I don't call myself names, and I don't call anybody else names. I've learned not to judge. I've learned not to criticize, and all those things that I've just mentioned are really, really important for my self-worth and the way that I treat others and the connection that I want to have with others also.
Grant, how do you hope sharing your story will impact those who are facing their own challenges and adversities, and what message would you like them to take away from your experiences?
I hope when people hear this, that they can identify with the place that I was at, and I hope that it might bring them to reach out and ask for help, because we can't do this alone. We're not wired for isolation. We're not wired for loneliness. We are like hardwired for connection with other people. So I would just hope that if they can get something from what I've said, that they can reach out. They can do it anonymously, but please just reach out and seek some help, because that's the most important thing, because, they are worth it just like I am worth it. They are worthy of love, and they are worthy of joy, and they are worthy of belonging. And we all get that that opportunity. But I understand when people are struggling mentally, that even if they can get some people around them that are going to keep their flame alight while they're down, and help them and nurture them, and even if they bring them to a counselling session, or sit with them by the phone, or just something where they can reach out, because that connection is something that is so important, and we really need to look after one another in that area. And I'm more than willing to share my story with regards to do that, even though I'm really good with that now.
Oh, and thank you so much, Grant, for sharing your story and being part of the Holding On to Hope podcast. I really appreciate it and really look forward to seeing what's in store for you next.
Thank you very much, Ruben.
Thanks for listening to Holding On to Hope, the podcast. Lifeline is grateful to all Holding On to Hope participants for choosing to share their personal lived experiences openly and courageously in order to offer hope and inspiration to others. Your act of kindness makes for a better world. And remember, you don't have to struggle alone. Visit toolkit.lifeline.org.au today.